Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's been a little challenging on the technical side to get these streams going to all of the destinations. I will have to manually post the stream afterwards over on my Substack channel. Sorry about that. And Instagram would not connect up live today, but we're streaming live on Facebook Live, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and Rumble. I hate that when I have technical challenges at the beginning. So let me finish getting my screen set here as people filter in. I appreciate that. So boom, boom, boom. The chat is open. The comments are open. If you're joining the show from whatever platform, please jump on and say hi. Tells me where you're at. Love to see where people are streaming in from. And if you have any questions throughout the show, don't hesitate to post anything in there, and I'll try to get them answered for you during the show. So, good morning. I'm Dr. Jeff Evenson. I'm a board certified doctor of holistic health. I have my practice here in Finlayson, Minnesota, but I also work virtually with clients across the country. I am not a medical doctor. I do not practice medicine. I don't pretend to practice medicine. I don't prescribe, diagnose, treat, or cure. Instead, I simply help people get their health back naturally without drugs and surgery using health coaching, lifestyle coaching, and supplementation, teaching people how to eat again, and so on. So, I'm going to preface this episode. Last week was a great episode, I think, on, last week I had talked about why people don't heal. I'll get into that here in a little bit. And today we're going to keep talking about trauma and how that can affect the body. And one of the main reasons that this work these last couple of weeks has been popping up as a highlight is because it's I'm drawing some of this data, some of this information from my own personal work, my own personal growth. Okay. And so when I'm sharing stories about my personal journey through some of the things that the body holds on to, some of the traumas and all that, I'm not sharing it to get sympathy, to garner sympathy, or uh, have you feel bad for me or feel sorry for me. I'm not looking for pity and all that. I am looking to just draw from my own experience. I think a good holistic practitioner is someone who is always doing their own personal work to keep their health maintained or to keep working on improving their health. And that's the work that I'm doing right now. I'm 60 years old. I don't feel like I'm 60. I'm working out in the gym. I'm doing strength training 5 days a week and whatnot. And so, and some days I get my cardio in on top of that. So it's been a great journey to continue to keep diving down into the layers and exploring, why some aspect of my body may not be healing. And with all of that said, a draw from the background too, just to remind people, I'm a retired Navy chief. I did that for 20 years. While I was in the Navy, I coached people. I was in charge of leading people in physical fitness training. I was in charge of the one of the commands I was stationed at. I was the command DAPA. They call that the Drug and Alcohol Program Advisor, taking care of sailors who were dealing with various addictions. I was a facilitator for personal growth retreats. Okay. And but never along the way was I ever a talk therapist. I'm not a psychologist or into psychiatry at all. Um, but I am willing to talk about some of the shit that people get into. And if I'm working with a client that comes up and they've got some really deep shit, some deep traumas and all that, uh, they may hear the recommendation from me to go seek out a talk therapist. Okay. Um, Sometimes, and I've used talk therapy in my life, in my own journey, And sometimes that is essential to move the bar in your life, is to talk with somebody like that who can help you through some of this. So hopefully I didn't put anybody off on oops, come on now, computer, on all of that stuff. But so today, hey, good morning, Darla. Glad to see you on. So today I'm going to talk about the title of the show is The Truth About Stress. We're going to talk about healing the hidden trauma that keeps you stuck. Um, of course, I'm your host, Dr. Jeff Ewenson, board certified doctor of holistic health. And today I want to talk about something that most people completely overlook when it comes to their healing, and that is stress. Okay. Now, before you roll your eyes and think, yeah, I know stress is bad, I want to challenge you to pause right there. Okay. Because what I'm talking about today isn't just mental or emotional stress, it's the kind of deep internal pressure that lives in your tissues, in your cells, in your breathing patterns, sometimes even in your faith. Okay. It's the weight that never seems to lift. It's the constant tightness in your chest. It's that low hum of anxiety that you've gotten so used to, you actually think it's normal. So last week we talked about why people don't heal and how to change that. Today, I want to take that a step deeper. Because for many people, the reason they don't heal isn't about what they're doing. It's about what their body is still carrying. Okay. And it reminded me of the studies that I did at some point in my holistic career. I've been doing this now over 16 years, as many of you know. One of the authors and people that I studied was Bruce Lipton. Okay, he wrote a very profound book called The Biology of Belief. He was a former cell biologist at Stanford, and he showed that the environment around a cell, not its genetic code, determines how that cell behaves. And that environment includes the biochemical signals your body sends, like stress hormones, and the energetic and emotional signals you carry, your thoughts, beliefs, and perceptions. And so he famously said, it's not the genes that control our lives. It's our beliefs about life that control our genes. Isn't that fascinating? And so when you live in constant fear, anxiety, or stress, your body's cells adapt to survive, not to thrive. And as I pulled that together last night, it was just a big smack dab on the forehead. It's like, my God, I feel like a majority of my life has been in that zone. Okay. Yes, I survived, and I have survived my entire life with this energy trapped in my body, living in constant fear, anxiety, and stress on my body's cells. They adapt to survive, not to thrive. And they go into protection mode. They close off, they stop growing and repairing. And digestion slows, immunity drops, detox stalls. Okay. But when you shift into peace, safety, and love, the cells open up again. They repair, detoxify, and communicate properly. That's the biology of belief in action. And so, as I tie that into my story, over these last couple of weeks, I've been doing some deep trauma work. Okay. And I can feel it in my body. It's like parts of me that were shut down are slowly coming back online. And this is phenomenal. Bruce Lipton talks about how our cells respond to our perception of safety and danger, and I'm realizing my body had been living in survival mode for years, even though my mind thought it was fine. So in these last couple weeks, I've had to face parts of myself I didn't even realize were still holding tension. Old wounds, old stories, moments that my nervous system never quite released. And it's been humbling because no matter how much we know, how much we teach, or how much we do to stay healthy, stress has this way of sneaking back in through the cracks. And you might not want to call it trauma. You might want to just call it being wound tight or on edge or never really at ease. But here's the truth. Your body knows. It knows when you're living in fight or flight. It knows when you're trying to outrun pain instead of healing it. And it will hold on to that tension until you show it a better way. I fully believe that it has been something that never fully allowed me to step into my body. The energetic, the soul, the spiritual being that lives in this physical body, it always felt like that I had one foot outside of my body ready to run so it could be safe. And that's what I did as a child. I would leave my body literally, mentally, emotionally to survive. And I realized that as I became an adult, I never fully would allow myself to step back into my body because there were still areas in my body holding on to trauma. And so today I want to break it down. We're going to talk about what stress really does to the body, not just emotionally, but physiologically. And I'm going to look at how trauma and unresolved stress can hijack your digestion, your hormones, your sleep, your relationships, and even your faith. And then I'll walk you through some simple, practical ways to begin teaching your body how to feel safe again, how to calm the chaos, restore your energy, and create the kind of inner peace that allows true healing to begin. So if you've been feeling stuck, tired, anxious, or like your body just isn't responding anymore, this episode is for you. Grab your coffee, take a deep breath, and let's dig into the truth about stress and how to finally set your body free. So grab your coffee, take a deep breath, taste your coffee, and let's get after it. Before I dive in, if you happen to be watching, say hi on the chat, and I will do my best to and tell me where you're watching from. And I like to see where people are from around the country. Okay, looks like we have people listening in from X and Rumble and Facebook. That's awesome. I appreciate you guys tuning in. All right, so let's talk about what stress really does. You know, the biology of belief and the burden that we carry. You know, over the last couple of weeks, I've been sitting with some pretty heavy stuff. Okay. Not the kind of stress you fix with a weekend off or a new supplement protocol. Okay. I'm talking about that deeper layer, the one that hums quietly underneath everything else. And when I started slowing down enough to really listen, I could feel how much of my body was still on alert. Like my nervous system hadn't gotten the memo that life was safe now. Sometimes it takes a mirror from takes a person to mirror some of the stuff back to you. And when they do that, they're not breaking you, they're mirroring stuff that you need to see. Okay? It's subtle, You don't notice it when you're busy helping others or when you're running a business and being productive. But when you finally pause, you feel it. The tight chest, the shallow breath, the mind that keeps scanning for what might go wrong next. That's just not stress. That's the body remembering. And so, Dr. Bruce Lipton in The Biology of Belief explains this beautifully. Okay? He discovered that our cells respond not to the outside world directly, but to our perception of it. So if I perceive danger, even if there's no tiger in the room, my brain releases chemical messages that tells every cell in my body, protect yourself. Those messages are things like cortisol and adrenaline. And when those chemicals hit the cell membrane, the cell closes down. Growth, repair, and detoxification stop. Everything in the body shifts into survival mode. Now, imagine living like that for years, maybe decades, without realizing it. That's what chronic stress and unresolved trauma do. It's like your entire biology gets stuck in a defensive crouch, waiting for impact. Lipton calls this the biology of perception, and it lines up perfectly with what Scripture tells us. If you look at Proverbs 23, verse 7, it says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. What we hold as truth in our heart, fear or faith, danger or safety, becomes the language our cells respond to. So for me, this hit hard because I realized there were still places inside me that didn't trust safety. Not in my body, and not fully even with God. Old stories from my past, from my childhood, from seasons of burnout. They'd written programs into my nervous system. And no amount of clean eating or supplements could override a body that still thought it was in battle. So part of my work lately has been teaching my body what peace feels like again. That's prayer. That's breath. That's sitting still long enough to remember that God is not waiting for me to hustle my way to healing. He's inviting me to rest. And here's the thing I've learned through all of this, the nutrition, the supplements, the detox work, they absolutely matter. They're often what helps the body calm down enough to even begin releasing what it's been holding. They rebuild the foundation. They give the adrenals the minerals they need, support the mitochondria, and open the pathways so the body can finally exhale. But there's a point where we also have to meet that healing halfway by addressing the patterns of tension, fear, and overdrive that keep the system running hot. Physical support and inner restoration go hand in hand, and it's not either or, it's both and. So, I want to unpack what actually happens inside the body when that stress response never shuts off. Okay? How it hijacks digestion, hormones, and sleep, and why you can't supplement your way out of a fight or flight state. But before we go there, let's take a moment, even right now, to breathe in deeply and remind your body. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, and remind your body, I am safe, I am loved, I am supported. Because that's where healing begins. Not in the mind, but in the message the body finally believes. So, we're going to talk about the cost of living in stress mode. Trust me, there is a cost. I've worked with so many people over the years, um, and sometimes the stress, and I've had this happen to me two very distinct times in my life, where the solution to the stress I was feeling was to stop doing the action that I was doing. Okay. The first significant action was it was time for me to retire from the Navy, from my time in the Navy after 20 years. I woke up one morning and I knew in every fiber in my body that it was time to retire. And I put my papers in and retired at 20 years. I was 37 when that happened. And then it happened again when I was working my job with my back in my old career. I did an overlap for a number of years because I needed to, but on the side, I kept practicing and kept building my holistic practice here. And I reached a point where I woke up one morning and I knew in every fiber of my being that if I didn't leave that job, that day job that I was doing was sucking my soul dry. The stress that I was feeling, I just was not having fun with that job anymore. It was done. I knew it was done. And that was a Friday morning, and I thought, no, I'm not going to call. I'm not going to call today. I'm going to give myself the weekend to just kind of think about it. And let me tell you, folks, I could not wait until Monday rolled around where I could call and talk to my boss and say, hey, I'm giving you my notice. He thought I was giving like a 1 year notice because the company has a 1 year retirement program. And I told him, nope, I'm giving you 2 weeks. And he was pretty upset with me about that. But I didn't care. It was necessary for my own survival. And so I've seen people work in jobs day in and day out where I can feel when I'm talking to them, it's like, you know what? The one thing that you might want to consider is getting rid of your job. For some people, depending on what part of life you're in, that means retiring. And when you retire, it doesn't mean that your life is over. It means you get to do what you really want to do. Okay. For others, it means finding a job that they like. I've worked with a couple people, especially school teachers. I can think of two since I moved up north that every time they would come in for their updated office visit, the stress of their teaching job was killing them. And I don't make the recommendation lightly to people to, maybe you should consider changing your job. But in those cases, it was necessary. And they would tell me they put their notice in. And when they would come in for their follow up visits, the life energy was just returning back to their bodies. It was just remarkable what a difference in that person it made when they got rid of the anchor that was dragging them down to the bottom of the ocean. It's fascinating. So let's talk about what really happens when stress becomes your normal state. Okay, because this is where most people's healing quietly stalls. And so when you live in chronic stress, your body doesn't know the difference between a bear chasing you and an overdue bill or a broken relationship. To the nervous system, threat is threat. And when threat becomes familiar, your whole physiology begins to reshape itself around survival instead of restoration. So, the adrenal story, this is where we run on empty. Your adrenal glands sit like little helmets on top of your kidneys. Okay. Their job is to produce the hormones that help you respond to life. Adrenaline for quick reaction, cortisol for long term balance. In a healthy rhythm, cortisol rises in the morning to wake you up and falls at night so you can rest. But when stress becomes constant, that rhythm flips. You wake up foggy and crash mid afternoon. You get a second wind at night, then lie there staring at the ceiling. Coffee becomes your gas pedal and sugar your spare fuel tank. The longer this goes on, the more your adrenals struggle. You burn through minerals like magnesium, sodium, and potassium. Your blood pressure wobbles. Your motivation fades. You're running on fumes. But your mind keeps saying, push through. That's why adaptogenic herbs like things like rhodiola, ashwagandha, eleuthero can be life changing. They help the adrenals adapt and repattern the stress response while you're working on the deeper root, how to slow down. With your digestion, when the gut goes offline, here's something few people realize: digestion is a luxury function. Okay. When you're in fight or flight, the brain says, shut down digestion, we've got bigger problems. Blood moves away from the gut toward the arms and legs. Enzyme production stops. Stomach acid weakens. You can eat the healthiest meal in the world, but if your body is in survival mode, it's not going to digest it well. That's why so many clients tell me, I eat clean, but I'm still bloated. It's not the food, it's the physiology. The gut can't heal when you're in a state of fear. When we bring in drainage support, liver, lymph, bowels, and calm the nervous system, digestion begins to restore itself. I use tools from companies like Energetics, Standard Process, Cellcore, and gentle binders to help the body move waste while the mind relearns peace. And you can feel it. Suddenly, food starts working for you again instead of against you. And this is where I've been at in my journey. Is the interesting part. I've been strength training, working with this trainer. I started in March, and I've been absolutely committed to this program. It's a 1-year program, working out 5 days a week, strength training and cardio. And I've been playing with the same 3 to 5 pounds and the same 3 to 5% body fat sitting right there. Just kind of, it's like, fuck, this shit is not getting off of me. Yes, my body is redistributing and reconstituting its form and how it looks, but I'm still not losing the body fat or the weight and all that, and it's been frustrating. And over the last few weeks, as I've been doing this trauma work, I'm finally feeling like I'm breaking through and helping my body let stuff go. I've been holding on to stuff so fucking tight in my life that I've been snuffing it out. And that means I've been holding on tight to the weight. Why won't my body let this go? Why won't I let it go? Because it's been in a fight or flight survival mode. And so the curious part is, after I let that go, my sleep is, as I've been working through this, my sleep has been vastly improving. My bowel movements have been vastly improving. my attitude, everything. I just feel more calmer, more at peace. And so, I mean this, you can start to feel it as you let this stuff go. Now, I talked about sleep, the hormones in sleep, it's kind of a domino effect here. Cortisol doesn't work alone. It talks to every hormone system in your body. So when cortisol stays high, thyroid slows down and your metabolism tanks. Estrogen and progesterone get out of balance. This is where you might feel PMSy, infertility, or menopause symptoms worsen. Testosterone dips, energy, confidence, and libido might fade. Melatonin can't rise. You lose deep restorative sleep. So when clients tell me, I just need more willpower, I remind them this isn't about discipline, it's about chemistry. You can't out hustle your hormones. You have to honor them. And that's where nutritional support, minerals like magnesium and zinc, B vitamins, glandulars, amino acids, the whole cast of characters that we use for supplementation play a huge role. They rebuild what stress depletes so your hormones can find rhythm again. And once sleep returns, once you start waking up rested, that's when healing accelerates. Because sleep is when the body does its deepest repair and detox work. Hey, I see some more people jumped on. Jump on in the chat and say hi where you're watching from. I'd like to see where people are watching from. So let's talk about the brain-body feedback loop, okay? And here's where it gets fascinating, and Bruce Lipton's research ties in beautifully to this. Your brain and your body are in constant conversation, okay? If your thoughts are anxious, your brain releases stress chemistry. That chemistry hits your cells, confirming, yes, we're still in danger. Those cells hit. Boy, I lost my place in my notes. Isn't that? Yes, we're still in. Okay, those cells, they send signals back up the vagus nerve. That's the nerve that practically runs from head to toe. It sends the signals back up the vagus nerve to the brain, reinforcing the story. That's why simply telling yourself to calm down doesn't work. The loop has to be interrupted on both levels, the mind and the body. And so this is quantum nutrition testing fits right here. It helps identify the physical stressors that are keeping that loop alive, the pathogens, the toxins, nutrient deficiencies, even emotional imbalances. And once those stressors are cleared, the body starts trusting itself again. And when the body trusts, the mind follows. The next system that we talk about is the immune system, and this is where we can get stuck in the shadows here. Chronic stress doesn't just wear you out, it disarms your immune system. Initially, cortisol suppresses inflammation, but over time, immune cells stop responding to cortisol altogether, and inflammation flares up everywhere. That's when you start seeing joint pain, allergies, chronic fatigue, or autoimmune tendencies. It's not random, it's the price of living too long in a chemistry of fear. When you restore safety, the immune system recalibrates. It stops attacking everything in sight and returns to discernment the same way we do emotionally when we feel safe. And then there's the spiritual mirror. Okay. Stress at its deepest level is often a struggle for control. This is what I've been working on. We carry things we were never meant to carry. We forget the invitation Jesus gave us: come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. That's from Matthew 11:28. That's not a metaphor, it's biology and theology meeting in the same sentence. Because when you finally let go, when you cast those cares, the body receives that message too. The breath slows, the heart softens, the chemistry of peace replaces the chemistry of fear. So, when I say that chronic stress hijacks your health, I don't mean it lightly. It touches everything: energy, digestion, hormones, immunity, even faith. But here's the good news: the same system that created the stress response can uncreate it. With nutrition, supplementation, and faith based lifestyle rhythms, you can teach the body safety again. And that's the work that I'm doing. Okay. So we're going to talk about exactly how to do that, the tools, the faith practices, and daily rhythms that calm the chaos and restore coherence between your body and your spirit. Okay. Because once the body remembers peace, healing is no longer something you chase. It's something that begins to happen naturally. And so this is where we move from fear to faith, teaching the body safety again. And when you've lived in stress long enough, peace can feel foreign, even unsafe. I know as I've been bringing safety back into my body and my mind and my emotions and my faith, my spirituality, I wasn't sure what to trust anymore. I was doubting. Is this really safe? So it takes time and it takes practice to work through that. The body becomes addicted to its own chemistry of chaos. It's wild but true. We can become more familiar with adrenaline than with calm. So the journey back to peace isn't about forcing yourself to relax. It's about retraining every layer, mind, body, and spirit, to recognize safety again. So faith at its core is nervous system regulation through surrender. And again, when I talk about faith here, I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about spirituality, faith, the belief in God or a higher power, something bigger than yourself, whatever you choose to call that, the voice. Um, there's a faith that there's something there for us. And so faith at its core is nervous system regulation through surrender. It's the act of saying, I don't have to hold it all. And I'm noticing in my own body as I said those words out loud, I could feel that it's almost a bittersweetness in what I'm feeling. I don't have to hold it all. It's a celebration of my body. Yes, it agrees. And then it's the recognition that it's been there for so long that it's almost like an old friend, but it hasn't been helping me, holding on to that. So I don't have to hold it all. So when you pray, when you worship, when you speak gratitude, you're not only aligning with heaven, you're also recalibrating the body's chemistry. Cortisol drops, oxytocin rises, the heart rhythm shifts from chaotic to coherent, Science calls this heart-brain coherence. Scripture calls it the peace that surpasses understanding. That's Philippians 4, verse 7. Either way, the outcome is the same. Your cells receive a message of safety. And I often tell clients, you can't heal in a state of threat. You heal when your body believes you're safe, even safe in God's hands. And sometimes that belief starts with a single breath and a whispered prayer. Lord, I'm tired of fighting. I'm getting emotional now. Teach my body what peace feels like. Lord, I'm tired of fighting. Teach my body what peace feels like. So, in this process, it's about re-educating the nervous system. Okay. Faith opens the door. Daily practice keeps it open. And so here are some ways to train the body towards safety again, the physical acts of surrender. One of my favorite ones is grounding. Okay. And this is where you go outside, stand barefoot on the earth for 2 minutes. Feel your weight, your breath, the solidity beneath you. And electrons move from the earth into your body, neutralizing inflammation and calming the sympathetic system. I like to do this in the mornings when the sun's coming up, and stand there in my bare feet and look at the sunrise and just stand there with my arms open. I'm in my bare feet. Sometimes I'm in my bare everything because I live out in the country, and can just stand there and greet the sun and allow my body to ground. Okay. So do this while praying or giving thanks, because it's creation reminding your biology that you belong here. The next thing you can do is breath work. Okay. I was working with a new client yesterday, and we took a moment to do a little bit of breath work because I could sense the chaos in the person's energy field. Okay. And so I took a moment with her, and we just took a moment to breathe, to try to settle down the chaos in the energy field. And so one of the techniques to help us breathe is box breathing. Okay. This is where you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold for 4, and you exhale for 4, and you hold for 4. So it would be the next breath work that you can do. There's another one, and do these a few times in a row. Don't do them just once. I would say 3 to 5 times or more, whatever you feel called to. Trust what your body is feeling. Trust the sensations in your body, and just go with it. Okay. There's the 4-7-8 breath. Okay. Longer on the exhale to cue the vagus nerve that it's safe. So you got the 4-4-4 or the 4-7-8, and each breath pattern tells the body you are not in danger. Okay. Hey, Charlie, good to see you on the show. I appreciate you listening. Somebody listening, Charlie's listening in from Florida. We met a couple weeks ago at the conference in Orlando, the Quantum Leap Conference. Thanks for tuning in, Charlie. So The next tool that you can use is journaling and gratitude. And I'm here to tell you, in the last couple of weeks, if I didn't have the tools to help me journal, I I'm not sure I would be sitting here right now, because I went through some pretty intense emotions and I was trying to make sense of it all. And journaling helped me take that stuff out of my head and quit cycling around with the same bullshit, the same old stories, the same old tapes. I could finally get it out onto paper or the app I was using, and journal, just typing and sometimes screaming through my fingers into the keyboard. I got to get this out. When you write out gratitude or scripture, you anchor new neural pathways. The limbic system records it as real. And that's why journaling your wins and answered prayers is more than spiritual discipline, it's somatic therapy. And there were days that I would spend hours journaling because it was the only way I could get this emotion, this energy out of my body and try to make sense of it, recategorize it, re-express it, feel it. Okay. Now, there's another one here, connection. And I thought I had an aside here. Where did it go? Maybe it's up higher. Sorry about that. I want to make sure that I'm getting the right information here. Something shifted in my notes. I hate that when that happens. Here, let me do this. Mm-hmm. And put it here. All right. Okay. One of the things with connection and I'll tell you, this is what one of the biggest triggers for me was that kind of started peeling through the layers. Is somebody had mentioned to me that I was grasping for connection. Okay. And in my mind, I heard that as I'm desperate for connection. And so I started to journal that and to explore that. And that's where things really got down into some of the trauma work. Where did I lose my ability to have a healthy connection with people? And it started out right from childhood. Because when you're in childhood trauma, you spend your life in survival mode, waiting for the next thing to happen. Okay. Um, and it was a challenge. So connection, isolation keeps stress hormones elevated. Okay. So meaningful connection, like a hug, conversation, shared laughter, it releases oxytocin, which is the hormone of bonding and repair. And healing often happens fastest when you're in community. Okay. So join community, build community. This is one of the reasons I try to build this holistic community, holistic healing community, is people need connection. We've got to help each other. Other forms of connection could be, go to church. All right. You can go join a bowling league. Up here where I live, there's a sportsman club where they do trap shooting. And I went last week and I went to a meeting and I ended up joining the club. And so connection, you got to talk to people. It's okay to do that. Now, the next one is movement. Okay. Gentle movement like walking, stretching, or dancing resets energy flow. Tension stored in muscles becomes motion again. And even humming or singing activates the vagus nerve, literally tuning your body back into harmony. Okay. Now, I want to make sure I put this in, I have an aside here. Um, yeah, this is the right spot. So those five things on re-educating the nervous system: grounding, breath work, journaling, and gratitude, connection, movement. I get my movement. I'm kind of uh, religious about it. Every morning, I roll out of bed and go hit the gym because the strength training, it really helps me feed my body and work on those emotions. Okay. Um, so one of the asides that I came up with is the healing power of tears. Okay. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because over the last couple of weeks, I have spent a lot of time sitting down and allowing my body to cry. Okay. Now, I'm sharing this because I want men to know that it's okay to do this. A lot of us were taught and have been taught through society, societal norms, cultural norms, and all that kind of stuff that men don't cry. Okay. Well, when I mentioned earlier, I was in talk therapy. I started that when I was 33 years old. I'm 60 today, but I needed talk therapy back when I was 33. And my counselor, Al Adams, I remember his name, he saved my life, gave me permission to cry. Because he said, "When's the last time you cried?" I'm like, "I don't cry. That's stupid. What do I have to cry about? I've got a great life." He said, "You may have a great life, but why the hell are you in my office then?" And we talked through that, and he gave me permission to cry. And it was one of the most profound defining moments in my life, because when he gave me that initial permission to cry, told me what to do. He said, "Go to your favorite place out in the woods, sit down, start journaling, and if you cry, allow it to come through." Okay. I thought, fuck, is this guy crazy? So I did. I went out, I did this. I sat there on the bench, started journaling, and I could feel the emotion and the tears starting to come up. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to trust this guy. And I started to cry. What he didn't tell me is after a lifetime of not crying, when I broke the seal on that I couldn't stop. And I literally cried for a week. Anything. The wind blew funny, I would cry. It was really hard to function. I had to leave. I had to take work off so I could sit home and process this vast treasure trove of trapped emotions in my body and let it out. And I called him after like 2 days of that, and I said, "Dude, what the hell did you do to me?" Um, and he gently reminded me, "No one has ever died from crying." And that sat with me for the rest of my life, because now I can feel when my body needs to cry, when I have to release emotion. In fact, I have a movie list that I'll put up. If I feel like I'm stuck and I can't get the emotions out, I might watch a movie that I know is going to trigger tears. Okay. So the healing power of tears, it's somewhere along the way, especially for men. I'm going back to my notes here. We were told that crying is weakness, that we've got to hold it together, keep moving, stay strong. But the truth is, crying is strength. It's the body's built in pressure valve. It's how the nervous system releases energy that's been trapped for years, sometimes decades. And over these past couple of weeks, I've had moments where I just had to sit down and cry, not out of despair, but out of release. And every time I could feel something shifting, like my body finally exhaled after holding its breath for too long. Tears are chemistry. They carry stress hormones out of the body. They reset breathing patterns. They soften the heart so peace can come in. So if you find yourself crying, whether you're a man or a woman, don't apologize for it. Don't rush to shut it down. Let it move through you. Because what doesn't serve you anymore doesn't belong trapped inside you. And sometimes the most powerful detox that you can do doesn't come from a bottle, it comes from your own tears. That's all I have to say about that. So crying is good. Crying is strength for men and women. All right. So part of it feeds, feeding the body for peace. You can't pour from an empty tank. I'm looking at the time. I'm going to go over today, folks. You can't pour from an empty tank, and your nervous system is no different. Stress chews through nutrients, particularly magnesium, vitamin C, B complex, zinc, and healthy fats. That's why part of the healing plan is nutritional. And when I work with clients through quantum nutrition testing, I use targeted support. I might use magnesium and adrenal complexes to calm electrical overstimulation. Might use omega-3s for brain resilience. Might go with mineral repletion for electrolyte balance, herbal adaptogens to rebuild rhythm. Now, these don't replace the inner work, they enable that inner work. When the body feels nourished, it finally feels safe to release trauma. And there's some spiritual practices that you can do to restore coherence. You can do morning alignment, okay? Before checking your phone, take 30 seconds to thank God for breath and presence. You can do a midday reset. Pause, reflect, pause. Place your hand on your heart and breathe until your shoulders drop. Okay, most of us are, walking around all tight and wound up. You can breathe and let your shoulders drop. You can even do an evening reflection. Confess, forgive, release. Empty your emotional backpack before sleep. These small sacred pauses train your body to live in grace instead of grind. And so what happens when safety returns? When you consistently pair faith with regulation, cortisol normalizes, blood sugar stabilizes, digestion resumes, hormones find rhythm, sleep deepens, creativity returns, and most importantly, you start feeling like yourself again. It's not that life gets easier, it's that your system learns not to interpret everything as danger anymore. You stop reacting and start responding. So I'm going to say again, healing isn't something that you chase. It's something that happens when you stop running. Okay? The moment that you exhale and say, God, I'm home, your whole body listens. That's when the chemistry of safety replaces the chemistry of survival. Okay, so I'm going to go through my next piece here pretty quickly. It's living from peace, and building rhythms that keep you aligned. And everything we've talked about today comes down to this simple truth. Healing is not a weekend project. It's a rhythm. Stress is sneaky, but so is peace. When you practice it daily, it begins to practice you back. So for the morning rhythm, you want to set your tone, not your phone. How you start your morning determines the chemistry you live in for the next 12 hours. Before checking notifications, take 5 quiet minutes. Sit upright, feet grounded. Breathe in gratitude. Thank you, Lord, for another day. Maybe read a verse or an affirmation that centers you in purpose. Many mornings I'll wake up, God, how may I be of service today? Drink water with minerals or lemon to wake the adrenals gently. That moment of stillness tells your body we're leading the day, not chasing it. And so, nourishment throughout the day, eat with intention, not anxiety. Build each meal around real protein, colorful plants, and healthy fats. Avoid the grazing. Let your digestion rest between meals. Keep caffeine modest and always paired with food. Supplement wisely. Adaptogens in the morning, magnesium at night, binders or drainage support as your practitioner recommends. These aren't chores. They're reminders that you honor the temple that God gave you. And then there's the midday reset. You can return to coherence sometime between noon and 3 p.m. Step outside. Feel the sunlight. Stretch. Pray a one-sentence prayer that says, realign my mind, my body, and my spirit. That 3-minute pause can lower your cortisol more effectively than an energy drink can raise it. And the evening wind down, finish soft. Your nighttime routine is your body's signal for repair. Dim the lights an hour before bed. Turn off the screens. Diffuse lavender or simply breathe deeply. Write down 3 things you're grateful for and 1 thing you're releasing to God. That act alone pulls stored stress out of the nervous system and lays it at His feet. And there's a weekly renewal. Okay, we think of Sabbath as spiritual rest, but it's also biological. 1 day a week, lower your stimulation, fewer screens, lighter food, more nature. Let your lymph, liver, and mind rest together. It's divine design. God built recovery into the calendar so your mitochondria wouldn't have to remind you. And then there's the long-term mindset. Peace is not fragile. It's a discipline. When life hits, you don't lose peace. You re-choose it. So there's 3 questions to keep handy. What am I believing right now? Fear or faith? Where is my body holding tension? And what small act can return me to safety in this moment? Then respond. Breathe, pray, walk, journal, sing. Every time you choose peace over panic, you rewire another circuit. And so Scripture says, let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts. That's Colossians 3:15. That word rule means to act as an umpire. Let peace call the shots. If a thought, a schedule, or a relationship consistently steals peace, it's time to reevaluate it. Keep community around you, whether it's church, friends, or healing group, because isolation breeds distortion and community breeds regulation. And when peace becomes your default, at first these practices feel like effort. Then they become rhythm. And eventually they become identity. You'll notice you breathe slower in traffic. You eat slower and taste more. You sleep deeper. And you pray from rest instead of panic. That's when you realize you're no longer chasing healing, you're living it. Okay. So, as I sit here wrapping up the episode 72, that's what this is, episode 72 of Morning Coffee with Doc Jeff, I can't help but think about the path that we've walked together over these past months. If you've been following the show for a while, you've heard me talk about food, supplements, energy, trauma, faith, and everything in between. And what strikes me is how every single episode, no matter the topic, has really been pointing to the same truth. The body knows how to heal, but it can't do it in chaos. And so we've talked about how nutrition provides the building blocks. We've explored the role of the liver and drainage, the adrenals, and the gut. We've unpacked what it means to protect your energy and stay grounded in faith. And today we added another layer, how stress and trauma sit underneath so many symptoms we chase. And so if you missed any of those episodes, go back and listen on rumble.com at Evenson Holistic. Each one builds on the next like pieces of a whole body roadmap. And the message running through all of them is simple. Healing isn't about perfection. It's about rhythm, awareness, and alignment. And so true healing happens when all three layers of you start communicating again. The body stops fighting itself. The mind stops racing. And the spirit remembers who's in charge. I've learned that supplements, nutrition, and detox are incredible catalysts. They wake the body up. But it's faith, forgiveness, and nervous system peace that let the body stay awake long enough to heal. And this is where the two worlds, functional nutrition and spiritual restoration, meet perfectly. When we nourish the body and surrender the soul, we give God something to work with. We create the environment where the miraculous becomes normal. And so, as I've been walking through my own healing over the past few weeks, doing trauma work, regulating my nervous system, and just being still, I've realized something pretty powerful. Healing doesn't always feel like progress. Sometimes it feels like quiet. Sometimes it feels like tears. Sometimes it feels like nothing at all. But deep inside, the system is recalibrating. So if you're listening right now and wondering why it feels like nothing's happening, maybe this is the moment your body is finally catching its breath. Don't rush it. Don't judge it. Just allow it. Because the same God who knit you together in the womb is still guiding your biology toward balance, if you'll let him. So if today's message hit home, I want to invite you to take a small action, okay? Maybe it's turning off your phone for an hour this afternoon. Maybe it's sitting on your porch with a cup of tea and simply breathing. Maybe it's scheduling that first quantum nutrition testing visit so we can see what your body has been holding on to. Whatever it is, do it as an act of faith, not as a checklist, but as a way of saying, God, I trust you with my healing. That's where it starts. That's where it always starts. So let's close with this prayer. Father, thank you for this time, for the remainder that you are the calm, for the reminder that you are the calm in our storm. Thank you for designing our bodies with divine intelligence, able to heal and restore when we finally let go. For every listener today who feels worn down, tense, or heavy, breathe your peace into their lungs right now. Teach us all to recognize the difference between striving and surrender. Help us release control, forgive where we've held bitterness, and rest where we've been resisting. Let every cell, every nerve, and every heartbeat return to the rhythm of your peace. I pray blessing over each person tuning in. May the week be filled with clarity, calm, and courage. and may your spirit guide them toward the next right step in their healing journey. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. So if this episode spoke to you, share it with someone who's been running on empty. You can find all the past episodes on Rumble. Just search Morning Coffee with Doc Jeff. Or my Rumble handle over there is Evenson Holistic. You can connect with me directly through evensonholistic.com if you're ready to start your own healing journey. If you go to the website, right in the middle of the home page says begin my journey. And if you notice, there's still a banner. I'm not sure when I'm going to turn that off. There's a banner at the top of the screen that has a promo code, gives you a couple $100 off the initial assessment. Okay. Remember, healing isn't about getting back to who you were. It's about becoming who God designed you to be all along. Okay. So until next time, this is Doc Jeff reminding you to breathe deep, walk in peace, and keep listening to the wisdom God wrote into every cell of your body. Okay. Thank you, darling. I appreciate you too. That is it, folks. I love you. Louis, go on. I love you and have a great week. We'll talk to you later.